good lunch and a nice chance to relax for a moment. So the next topic of conversation, and so, part of this is me sharing my observations of having run a large mentor organization, again, at Arizona State University, where there were at least 600 people who said that they were part of the mentor network. And so I've worked with a lot of different people and, tried to think about organizing that. So we're going to kind of move through a conversation about being a good mentor, some of the things that you can think about or that you can prepare yourself for as an individual, and then start to move into the conversation about what makes a good mentor program. And again, I certainly don't have the answer, and there is no right answer. It's really a question of what do you want Mentor Effect to become. So it will turn into a conversation, and at the end, or during the way, I will ask you some questions and ask you to kind of take notes for yourself, the answers to those questions, and at the end, we'll turn it into some small group conversation and then a report back to the group about, based on what you've heard yesterday and today, what do you think? Okay? So here's some thoughts. These are my thoughts, nobody else's, on how to be a better mentor. The first, bring your head and your heart, right? Because the people that are doing this, the people you're working with, really have their heart in it. And being able to make a personal connection is a big part of this. And so ultimately, whether you decide to work with a founder or they decide to work with you, at some point is going to be based on a human connection, in addition to some kind of skills-based or, more fact-based kind of connection. So I think it's important to just come as you are, to come as a person, and bring your head and your heart. Understand why founders are doing what they're doing. This is a link to a video. Maybe you've seen it. It's a TED Talk about understanding why people are doing something. I think it's important, if you're going to mentor, that you feel also strongly about what the team is working on, what it means, what it could be, not just the business opportunity, but that you can actually relate to why they're doing it as a human being. So watching that video may be helpful for you to ask that question. Do I like why they're doing it? Do I agree with that? Teach instead of tell. Sometimes I've seen answers like, I just came from running the mentor pool at the European Innovation Academy about 6 weeks ago. We had about 100 mentors and about 600 participants that went through a 3-week boot camp. And was interesting. So one of the instances that came up in our mentor discussion was 2 mentors started getting into an argument. One of them was the mentor who was working with the team, and the other was a coach, a life coach. And so there were life coaches there that were going around talking to the teams about their human experience. How were they working as teams? How were they feeling? And one of the issues that came up in the group was that the business mentor had said to the team, this is a terrible idea. This is not going to work. Or somebody already did this, or don't you know, right? And the business mentor was older and more experienced, and maybe was right. I don't know. But the way it made the people feel really was hurtful. It wasn't a question of being right or wrong. It was, in this case, it was a boot camp. It was a program that they were going to go through. But it brought up an interesting dynamic that you may have that experience too. So I guess the thing is, there's a way to tell somebody something without just telling them that they're wrong or giving them the answer. And I think the role of a business mentor is to help them discover the answer and reach the conclusions, as opposed to telling them what the answer is. Give focused advice. So hopefully the mentor program and the agreement that each people have with the startups that you're working with is based on some kind of performance metrics. KPIs is the word that is often used, but if you can focus your advice around specific things, that's always more helpful than general engagement. one of the things that I heard most often at ASU, and again, this was a very large program. We had 125 startups and 600 mentors. The most common complaint that I heard from the startups was that they felt like they were wasting time with the mentors, that it just wasn't a good use of their time in many cases. And okay, well, why is that? And a lot of times it was because they felt that they were the ones that were spending time educating the mentors about their business. And they would spend, an hour or maybe meet with that person another hour. So, and then they would only then discover that it wasn't a good fit, that the mentor wasn't the right person, didn't have the right skills. And after doing that 5 times or 10 times and still not finding the right person, their conclusion was, mentoring is a waste of time. We're spending too much time. We're not getting to the right person, so let's forget about mentoring. And so in many cases, sometimes people are in the program and they end up succeeding without really getting help from the program. They're there, they're in the space or they're on the list of companies, but they're actually not participating because in some way the program has failed them. They're not actually engaged. And so the question is, in that situation, whose fault was that? It's not the startup's fault, and it wasn't the mentor's fault. They were just trying to find one another, right? And it turns out they didn't find a good match. So the problem was the program, and how the program was designed and how it was managed, and the judgment, I would argue, of the role of the program in playing a role in making that match, to take out some of that high failure rate, right? So as we talk about how to design a program, one of the most important things to think about is how to design a program that reduces the amount of time wasted, your time and the founder's time. Be careful with your domain expertise bias. So for example, maybe you worked in an industry for 20 years, and now someone is coming along that has an idea that's related to your industry, but you believe that, hey, I just spent 20 years in that industry, that you have all the answers. It could be, it's possible that just in the same way that probably nobody expected Tesla to succeed in the automotive industry, they haven't succeeded yet, but they certainly have had an impact. It may actually be that there's things that somebody else sees that you don't see, even though you spent 20 years in the industry. And so, you have to be open to being surprised even about the things that you know well. It's important to understand new economy business models and the drivers of scaling and the way investors think about that, because at some point you're sort of an interface between helping the startup think about their business model and preparing themselves to succeed, and maybe you'll become part of the conversation between them and investors. Maybe you're helping prepare them or help with their pitch, or who knows, maybe you even end up playing a role on the team or investing in the team. And so it's important to do some reading in some of these areas and just be able to understand the categories and see where their business model fits. One of the best things that you can also start to do if you're going to be a mentor is to start intentionally growing your own personal network. So, in other words, everybody that's here today, if you haven't done so already, if any of you use LinkedIn, I don't know if LinkedIn is very widely used in Turkey, I would imagine, but I would suggest start connecting with everyone here, with one another, and start looking at each other's connection lists and start making a conscious practice to dramatically increase the size of your network. And then in specific, start asking yourself, if you want to mentor in a particular area, or if this is your area of domain expertise, how can you strengthen your network in a particular way that helps you and helps the community and helps the startup? And do the same thing for founders. Encourage them to start having a conscious plan to expand their network. And it's actually something that you can work on together if you decide to work closely together, if you make it a mentoring arrangement. I would suggest that should be one of the things that you measure one another on is, what kind of help do we need? Who are people that are world-class experts in this? Where are they? Because a lot of times what somebody's working on is so specific that you'll always find somebody nearby that can help, that can be useful, but sometimes that needle in the haystack, that particular expert, could be in the most unusual of places. Somewhere in the world they exist. Your job is to help find them and to get them excited about the project, get them willing to share their network, and so this has to be very intentional. And then finally, to start showing entrepreneurs what it means to be a good mentee, right? Particularly with the younger people, and this was my experience at the university where many of the founders are very young. Many of them have not had, a previous career. They don't know what a good boss looks like. They haven't had a boss. They have never worked for a good leader or a bad leader. I think by the time you get to our life, I could make a long list of all the assholes that I worked for that I would never want to work for again, and what made them that way. And I could make a long list of all the people that I really admired that were great leaders that, I would learn from and want to be more like them. Sometimes the people you're working with haven't had either experience. And so, in effect, you're becoming the role model for what a good manager could be, And so, what does a good mentee do? They're respectful. They show up on time. They do what they say they're going to do. They deliver reports. They follow the rules of the program if they're in a program. They take seriously the program. They're grateful for the support and the resources that are given. The world doesn't owe them something. Right? So you can help build as well. And I think that's an important conversation for the group. If you decide to all work together more closely, to have sort of almost a written set of values about what it means to be a good mentor and a good mentee. What are the things that we hope to accomplish together in terms of our human example? Teach, don't tell, because you could really be wrong. If you come in and tell them that you think you're right, well, you might be like the chairman of IBM who said in 1943 that there's a market for 5 computers in the world. Or you might be the British author who said democracy will be dead by 1950. Right? So even if you're an expert in your industry or your domain, you could still be very, very wrong. That's why it's important to teach, to listen, to be a part of a dialogue, and not presume to know everything. Why is it important to expand your network? So research in the area of network science suggests that the number one most important determinant of career success is your network. Another way of saying that is it still is and always has been who you know. Particularly now in this world where in many cases we're talking about technology-enabled startups that work on network effects, right? The network becomes key. How do you plug in? How do you get that connection? How do you get that next partnership so that things just start to go exponentially? If you are part of a closed network, it means you're seeing the same people all the time. You're probably reinforcing the same ideas. So step back and ask yourself, who is my network? It's a great opportunity to plug into this group and to have an open conversation and say, instead of having it be accidental, say, this is me. This is what my network looks like. I've spent most of my time in these organizations, these groups, this industry. What about you? So what do we have here collectively together? And what's missing? Because if you stay inside the same group, it's comfortable, it's validating, but you're not getting new information and you're not getting new ideas. And so the strength of you collectively is the power that you can bring to bear on the people that you're mentoring. The number one problem that I saw in trying to manage a 600 mentor organization was the lack of judgment. And I looked at probably 6 different pieces of software that were software for managing mentors. Some of them would take the LinkedIn profiles and let you sort by keyword or industry. Some of them did other things. I tried mind-body software. I tried a number of things that were supposed to be able to help schedule and match. And there still wasn't a tool out there that I could find, at least, that could substitute the role of judgment. And so as you think about designing your program, and as more mentors come into the fold, there has to be some kind of a way so that Omer, who's working with a particular company very closely, he knows what they need. He knows exactly what they need right now, right? Maybe he doesn't know in his network the person that they need to talk to, but maybe one of you does. How do you bring that together? How do you have that conversation so that that connection can happen more quickly, right? I didn't ever find a way. The problem I had was I had a staff of a lot of people, but they weren't the right people for that job. They were great program managers. They were great organizers, but they were not people that were experienced working in business or working with startups. And so they were not able to form the judgment about what the company needed. And then to make the call, I'm going to go find that person, right? And so there has to be inside an effective mentor organization some way of getting out from you, the one that has the principal relationship, the what is needed, and getting it out to the group so that those connections can happen more quickly and you're all helping each other, as opposed to it's just Omer who still has this challenge of needing to find that particular expert to connect his team with. So I will leave you with that challenge. I don't have the answer, but I think it has to be some kind of a process that's managed by a human being. And it has to be a human being that is at your level. It has to probably be one of you that gets it, that is willing to spend that time and play that role. In fact, Mehmet and I were having this conversation the other night about his organization, and I think we agreed on this point that that at some point there's just no substitute for judgment and relationships. So to me, this was the critical problem. Yes, sir.
Well, we were in the break discussing with a group of fellows in the old economy where there is scarcity, exchanging resources is not a good thing to do because there is scarcity. Now there is abundance. Exchanging resources can impact or can make a going up effect. But how this cultural change takes place, especially in a Turkish culture, is a question mark. That was what we were discussing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember, so my first job after MBA school, I went for a year and a half. I went to teach at a university in Mexico. And I thought, that I would go there and that there would be a guy with a PhD that would tell me, here's the class, and that I was going to be like a teaching assistant. And I found out that the class didn't exist. It had never been taught before, and this was the textbook. And so I thought, I'll go down to the library and look at some other sources, and I'll work to put together a nice syllabus and design the class. When I got to the library, there were only 40 books in the business section. There was no resource material. So I got on a plane and I flew back to where I was, and I went back and talked to all my old professors. I only had a week, and I bought a bunch of books, and somehow I put together a class. And after that started going really well, my boss came to me and he said, all your books, they need to come into my office. Well, why is that? Well, because I keep the departmental library in my office. I said, well, that's good, except I get here at 7 in the morning and you get here at 9. And I'm usually here after work and you go home, right? So it doesn't work for me to have my books in your office. That was not an acceptable answer. But I did not give up my books. The good thing is today we don't have these kind of problems, right? Because the information is everywhere. And that's the biggest change, that nobody owns anything anymore. And so if you're getting that kind of pushback, you know, I think there's a way to talk people around it, you know. If they think they're indispensable, they're not, because you'll find the answer somewhere else, from someone else, from another source, and it might just take you another day. But if you're looking for the answer, you'll find it.
I cannot blame that we are getting this effect, but it is going to be an exponential curve.
Yeah.
How this is going to be changing. That's my view.
Yeah. But you guys have a chance to start, you know, by creating the example. And if enough of you work together in this way, the impact should be powerful. And people will see that. And maybe it takes them a while to become convinced, but eventually they'll feel the force of what you're doing, and they'll realize that they need to get on and come with for the journey. So if you look at your network is a set of clusters, right? It's the people you went to university with, the people you worked at company X, Y, and Z with. When you lived in this city, it's those people. It's usually clusters of people that you've spent time with over different parts of your life. And there's a few people that you know, in different areas. I saw an example once of the network of Meg Whitman, the woman who's the CEO now of Hewlett Packard. And her network was being used as an example of, like, this is the ideal of someone's personal network, right? Because she went to Harvard Business School, she has been a CTO at eBay and then a CEO at Hewlett Packard, then she ran for governor. So her clusters in her network were high-level politicians and government people, finance people. In other words, there was nothing that she could ever want for that wasn't one phone call away. And maybe that was intentional, maybe that was accidental. But nevertheless, the power of that network is undeniable. And so then the question is, if you stepped back and looked at your network critically, what are the clusters in your network? How are they helpful to this group? How are they helpful to startups? And what new clusters would you like to form? For example, I was just talking to, tell me your name again. You have a garden. Tell me your name again. Ismail. So Ismail retired in 2010, and a friend of his told him to come to this meeting, and he said he was excited to maybe start getting involved in the community again. So this would be like a perfect time, to go back and look at your network and say, these are the people I know, and to start getting excited about meeting new kinds of people, right? Because being a mentor can also be an exciting way to intentionally meet new kinds of people. What are you interested in? Is there an area you would like to mentor in that you don't know about yet? Well, probably the people in this room are the people that can help you connect to that and learn from that. And the guy that could teach you the most is possibly sitting right next to you. So it's a great opportunity, for your personal development, to make friends and to learn new things, to be a part of a mentor group, if the group is run well and is meeting your needs. And so finally, what the goal here is to become the broker, right? The one who crosses between the boundaries, going back to the rainforest canvas, right? When you read the rainforest book, which I hope you will, the secret ingredient was the boundary crosser. It was the person that is not defined by any one network, that was considered to be the catalyst, And so how can you become that person, or how can you find somebody that already is that person and bring them into the group? So you have to know what your network is, see what the clusters are, see how you can go back and forth between them, and then what are the new clusters that you want to develop intentionally. And if you do that individually, and if you do that collectively with intention, this can be a very powerful group, right? So where should you connect? I don't know. What do you need? Do you need to find people that know about technology because you're looking for a technology from another place? Maybe there's a patent you're looking for. Maybe your startup would benefit from having a licensed technology. Where's the best place to get it? Do you have a technology that's looking for a market? Where's the right market for that? Start looking there for connections. Are you looking for talent? Where's the best place to find people that have the skills that the company needs? Or capital. Or you're looking for people in a particular industry because your company sells in the healthcare industry. Usually inside every country, there is a particular city or a couple companies that are the leaders in their healthcare industry. And so you just start to begin to think very intentionally about either your goals or the company's goals and go out and get these connections that you need. One common assumption that is definitely going to be wrong is that the future is going to be like the past or the present. I can see that already. I'm sure you wake up every morning with the same sense of somewhere between surprise and anxiety about the things that happen in the world. But however it is, it's very clear that the future is going to be different than the past. So the more you can be connected and close to people and in touch with the latest information, you're always ahead of the curve. Another common assumption in Silicon Valley is the right place for all startups, and I can tell you it isn't. There's plenty of startups that, for example, if you were wanting to come to the US, depending on the industry you're in, Silicon Valley is not the right place. It's a place worth a lot of money, but that money is looking for a very particular kind of opportunity. And if yours is not that opportunity, you might be better off in another ecosystem that focuses on that industry. And so starting to understand what other ecosystems are like and what they're known for, like going back to that research, you can actually start being much more targeted in terms of customers and access to capital and talent based on the type of company and the type of industry that you're working in. And the final thing here is that according to research done by McKinsey, something like 75% of the growth in the economy in the next 15 or 20 years is going to come from second and third tier cities. So when we think of ecosystems, we usually think of the big cities, right? Because that's where the creativity and the talent condenses. Like Istanbul is a regional magnet for talent and opportunities. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the market growth is coming here. And so the City 600, 60% of global growth in the next 10 years is coming in these next tier down cities. So these are the kind of reasons why it's important to be connected in other places. So the 5 factors determining scalability, going back to the earlier thing here, so I'm kind of ticking down the things that I thought were important to know as a mentor. And this is also out of the Chris Ye and the Reid Hoffman book. These are the kind of things that contribute to scalability. Market size, distribution, network effects, product market fit, and operational scalability. Can't talk about all of them right now, but these are the kind of things that, as a mentor, as you're preparing to help companies think about how to successfully scale and become the example in their ecosystem, these are the kind of things that we think are the most important to focus on. Here's an example of, this is a free app. This is my LinkedIn network. I plugged it in. It only lets you look at 499 contacts, but there's many tools out there like that help you look at your network and see the clusters and see, how many people are close to you or how many people you could reach if you connected to a friend of your friend kind of thing. I think it's really helpful to explore as a group having a tool like that so that some form of network intelligence could exist that could say, be much more targeted about how to get the right kind of connections that you need. So moving into talking about the program, my conclusion is, after being involved in these, that there's a lot of people. It's easy to find mentors, right? I mean, theoretically, anybody that walked in the door today could be a mentor, right? If they just agreed to show up and said they want to be a mentor, they could be a mentor, right? But we know that doesn't work. And we also know that even great mentors and great companies that want to work together can still somehow not connect. And so then the question is, how do you form a mechanism? How do you create a process here together that helps your program really succeed? And so my point here is that definitely the program is important, and that you should spend a lot of time thinking about how it's organized and how it's run and what the processes are going to be. That's much more important at the end of the day than whether people showed up in large numbers. Because I had the 600 mentor group, but in fact there were 20 people that were active, that were actually active and helpful. A lot of the other people just showed up for the cocktail party. And that's good too. It's definitely good to have the cocktail party because you want to have people aware of what you're doing and maybe have more people come. But the core group is critical. So I know you talked about this before. I didn't understand the panel discussion, but it's really important to understand why people mentor and to align the incentives between the program. Going back to the university example, when you want people to mentor and you ask them to sign a piece of paper that says, you know, I promise I'm going to give away all my time, but I don't want anything in return. That's just not realistic. Because let's be honest, there are some people who are mostly interested in giving back, or they have too much free time, or they're looking to socialize, they want to learn. There's some people that are doing it because it's their job. And this is all perfectly valid, right? But there are also some people in the group who might be looking for their next opportunity, who might actually be willing to quit their job or put money in and join the company. They might want to sell services to the startup, like a lawyer or an accountant or a marketing agency or development firm. Or they might be an investor looking for a chance to get closer and put in time and get to know these teams that they might put money in. All of these are valid, and all of them should be welcome. So the question is, how can you be transparent about which person is playing which role? And the role can change, right? It's not, I mean, you might come because you thought it was going to be a great party, but you later decided that there was an opportunity. So what are the rules? Is it okay to come and try to sell somebody a service? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe under certain circumstances, but probably not okay to show up and go give your card to everyone and say, you know, hey, I'm a lawyer, give me a call, I want to do your deal, and start bothering people, right? So there's got to be some like behavioral norms and values. So I don't know how you set those, but I think it's a really important conversation to have. So the first question that I think you all talked about it before in your panel, that I'd like you to just make a note of in your mind or write down for our discussion later. Why do you mentor? Or why would you mentor? These are typical ways that mentors are used by mentoring programs. There's mentor speed dating. Does everybody know what I mean by mentor speed dating? It's so speed dating is was a way that it kind of like you come in and you sit down for 5 minutes and talk to one person and then you move on, and you do that for an hour. So in 1 hour you just met 12 people and you try to see, did I meet somebody that could be a good match? So it's a fast way of letting people date before they get married as mentors and mentees. This is very common, at least in US mentoring programs. This is very common. I'm not sure how effective it is if it's working in isolation, unless there's some kind of a feedback mechanism where somebody later goes back and talks to the startups and talks to the mentors and says, so what happened here, and tries to formalize things a little bit and learn from that. If it happens accidentally, then it's sort of a lazy process, right? Because you're missing a chance as a program to learn something. There's social events, which are definitely valid because you want to build a community, it has to be fun, and it's a great way to bring new mentors in. If it's only social events, then the mentor and the company later will conclude that there's no value here, and maybe they'll stop coming, or maybe you'll just get people showing up for the free beer. Subject matter expert presentations, where the mentor is asked to come in and share their thoughts on setting up a legal entity, or how to do effective marketing, or what VCs are looking for when they make an investment and how they value things. These are often things that are asked for as a mentor. Maybe to hold office hours. Would you like to come, once a week and sit here for 2 hours and whoever signs up can come talk to you? Helping people with their pitch coaching and pitch presentations. These are probably the most common things that you see mentor programs offer. So my next question for you as an individual, which of these would you like to do? Or do you feel qualified to do? Which of them could you do? So you decide how to answer the question. But if these are the typical roles, where would you fit in?
Jeff, I have a question. We have been talking about the lead mentor role.
Yep.
Where does it fit in your structure or list?
So here, I'm just
Previous one.
talking about general things. So lead mentor, I think that's necessary, but I'm saying these are sort of typical ways. Not every group has a lead mentor. I definitely think there should be lead mentors.
Something additional.
But that's like a program decision, right? So I didn't include it. This is not a recommendation. These are just sort of observations. But I definitely think there should be lead mentors. How mentors should be used, in my observation, is to provide ongoing support. So there's really a relationship. That, I think, is probably what would translate into lead mentor, right? Ongoing support means you're there. That you're committed to measurable progress, that the program would have some kind of KPIs, that there would be some negotiated set of metrics that you're hoping to help the company achieve, and that you're committed to those as well. That you will teach the entrepreneur how to be a better entrepreneur and help move the company forward. Teaching the entrepreneur how to solve functional area challenges. Maybe they need to set up a sales force, and they've never done that before. Maybe your background is in sales, or you've been a sales manager. Maybe you can help them think through specific organizational challenges. And to help them learn what works as fast as possible and what doesn't work. So my next question for you is, based on everything that you've heard and seen and read, what do you think mentors should do? So the first question, the second question, and the third question, right? What would you like to do? What do you think mentors should do? How would you recruit other people like you? What would you be looking for? What criteria? Is it enough to have a desire to be a mentor? You take anyone? Their attitude is definitely important. Their reputation. Are they capable? Are they honorable? What's their style of dealing with people? How much time would you like them to commit? Is that their decision? Like they can decide, hey, I just want to show up 1 hour a month. Or as a program, do you want to have a minimum set of requirements? Are you recruiting by industry experience because you're focused on serving different verticals? Or functional area, sales, marketing, finance, and level of expertise? How and who would you recruit? I'm not giving you any answers today, sorry. Other things that, again, going back to the earlier thing, is how do you manage the assignments, right? So I think, and I understand that this is not a popular man. Not anymore, right? Because did his team lose? Is that what happened?
He lost. Attitude, not the team, but he lost.
He lost.
He was in a fight with the kebabchi. Kebabchi beat him. I mean,
He's a very accomplished guy, though.
He's a.
Very accomplished trainer.
So I called him, but he couldn't come today. He's a good coach, right?
He's the idol of authorization.
Okay.
if he selected we had two options last night. If we selected the other option, that was the place, the guy who has beaten him.
Really? His restaurant?
No, on the way around, this guy beat him.
He's got his ass kicked by the
Excellent.
Actually, he's an accomplished trainer.
Yeah.
He won many championships, so that's a joke aside, but he's a very successful guy.
Everybody has their fans
It's
and
not
their.
a very sensitive subject.
I can tell. I can tell.
That can speak for himself.
Okay.
So the question is, and I'm leaving this to you. I don't have the answer, but it's an important question that you'll have to decide: is how are you going to manage this process, right? Because again, if it's accidental, and if there's no follow-up, either you or the company you're mentoring, at some point, something will fall through the cracks, and people will conclude that they're not getting value. So how do you manage? Are you going to use software? Is there going to be a questionnaire for determining the fit? Will you do speed dating? Will the program come in and supervise or dissolve bad matches? Is there a role for human judgment? These are the things you need to think about. I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers, but how are you going to set accountability metrics? What are the KPIs? Well, Mentor Effect, as I understand it, is a mentoring group that could work across a lot of situations, not just with startups. Could work with small businesses. The guy with the kebab shop might need a mentor. Maybe the former soccer coach needs a mentor on his new business.
Doesn't learn to first teach.
So is there going to be some kind of an overarching structure that determines what an engagement looks like with a Mentor Effect mentor? What does that look like? How does it work? Things to think about. Probably a successful match looks like this. There's a purpose, everyone agrees, there's clearly established goals, there's regular communication, regular meetings that are scheduled, that somebody's tracking. There's an agreement to trust and confidentiality, probably something needs to be signed. There's a process that someone is watching to make sure that it works. Progress is identified and measured. And there's feedback coming both ways. And if you set the process up right, then anybody can come in and out of the process and receive these kind of services. So, these are just examples. I mean, you could use Google Docs, you could use Asana. I even visited with, there was an entrepreneurship program in northern Arizona that was very successful, and I went and sat with the guy that owns it, and he had designed his own software. And he was actually willing to, at the time, he was willing to share it, for a one-time fee and customize it and make it available to other incubators. But the central key was, if you're running the program, you need to be able to observe the relationship. So I'm speaking from the point of view of organizing the program as opposed to your individual role in it. If a commitment is made and a mentor meets with a mentee, and during that meeting, 3 things were agreed to, right? The mentee, the company was going to talk to the lawyer about, setting up their legal entity. They were going to focus on getting 10 new customers, and whatever those things were should be documented somewhere so that the people running the program, could be the program here at Starters Hub, or it could be the corporation program that's being served by Mentor Effect. Whoever is the customer can come back and see, were those commitments met? And at least be aware of what was discussed. So it's almost like after every meeting. And so the way this software worked at this very successful program in Arizona was, after every meeting, the mentor and the team were required to take notes. And those notes went into a central system that were consolidated somewhere so that a program manager could come through and read them and quickly get up to speed on what was agreed to and sort of manage. Now, that's important if Mentor Effect is going to serve a program, for example, like Starters Hub. If Starters Hub were to say, I'm going to outsource my mentoring program to Mentor Effect, then if I were Starters Hub, I would want that level of service back, right? So again, it's up to you to decide where this is going. How are you going to do meetings? Is it important to have in-person, virtual, some of each? What tools are you making available to people, or are you not? Is accountability one way or 2 ways? Is there a situation where You know, the mentor doesn't do a good job and the mentor gets kicked out, or the company didn't do what they said they were going to do, they broke their contract. What are the rules there? And so, you know, a sample program probably, you know, looking back to all of these things in general, would probably look like there's some kind of speed dating, there's some kind of way for people to meet. There's subject matter expert presentations that allow the community to come together and educate one another. Some of that could get recorded and put up on a website, so if you couldn't be at the meeting and you really wanted to learn that legal piece so that you could help your team, that you could go back and watch the video and learn from one another. That there's some kind of effective process for matching and selection. That there are metrics of success that are well known and documented and followed. And the pitch training and investor prep and other things like that. There could be numerous other workshops. But so it's partly content, it's partly social, it's partly process, it's partly accountability. It's an organization. It's actually a new organization having a mentor network. So I think that's, you know, in a sense, you're here starting to talk about how do we form a company, a new company that's going to accomplish these goals that you can play a role in. And so those are my thoughts on the subject. And now I kind of want to turn it over to you. Maybe if you've already talked about all of this before, if that's what the panel discussion was earlier, maybe I think this is a little bit broader. But this is an example of a program that is very well known in the United States. It's a not-for-profit. It's mostly retired executives. There are 300 chapters, so it's organized as a chapter-based organization, so most cities have one. There's someone running the local chapter that they're all volunteers. I believe maybe, I don't think there's any compensation involved. They do have an executive director and a team of maybe 30 people that sit, I think, in Washington, D.C. And they have a very clear, you know, set of processes. I experienced them because I was at the university and their mentors showed up during a block of time. They kept office hours at our facilities and our companies could go talk to them. So there are business models out there that you can look at, you know, in other places, how people have done this. This is just one. But if you do this well here, it could well spread to other parts of Turkey and have different chapters and just the same way that, you know, that many accelerator programs do. So, you know, my thought was, and I'm open to suggestions here, is just like you broke up before and you started, of course you didn't have time to finish making notes about the ecosystem, and you answered those 3 questions for yourself about you personally, is to ask yourself, what do you offer to the ecosystem and what would you like to get back in return in exchange for mentoring? And then as a group, and I will invite Ersin to help me think through this, all of you, how can we turn this into, if this is what we want, how can we turn this into a conversation about that's useful? Maybe, you know, somebody's, and I'll get out of the way so you can do it and talk to one another in Turkish. Maybe somebody takes notes. And we've used this as an opportunity to collect thoughts about what mentor effect could be and what are some of the most important things. Is this close to what you had in mind for today? Because we didn't really get a chance to talk about it.
Yeah, it's really good. You really help us to structure it a bit more.
Okay.
That's good.
So you're cool with the process. Okay.
Please go on.
How does this, give me your feedback. Is this useful? Is this, do you think you can contribute to helping think through this, what this ought to be? Is this a good way to do it, or how would you do it differently? Any thoughts? It's good? Okay. So again, maybe it could be the same group, could be a different group. The 3 questions I asked you before: what do you want to do? What do you think mentors should do? And how do you think the process should run? What do you offer? What do you need? And what should the strategy be here? What should the business model be? And what should happen after today? And where is Orhan? How much time do we have?
Actually, like 5 minutes.
Okay, so then you have a panel discussion.
I am.
Could we move the panel discussion so that everybody has maybe 30 minutes to focus on this?
Let's discuss two speakers.
I don't know what everybody's schedule is.
I suggest, Orhan, I mean, with the coffee break, so add another 15 minutes to the coffee break. So at least we have this filled fully of the groups. And then have some kind of very simple answers to these ones, very weak ones. And then we collect them because, you know, all this is, we will have a bit of other discussion, but this is a good input from the audience to, as an inflow for the process. So
Or maybe another way could be, you know, send an email.
No.
Could it be?
we like to get it now.
Yeah.
No. Okay. 'Cause
So 15,
now is better.
15 plus 15 minutes, 30 minutes coffee break. We love you to do this, and we love you to put this question, answers to this question, and then we will have an open discussion and try to have a kind of consolidated opinion how to continue.
Just one comment on it. If every group speaks about their own
Yes.
output, then it would take a bit longer than.
No. What we are saying, these ones, we are just collect. We will not discuss it.
The answers of the questions.
Answers of the questions, we will just collect for future, and then we will have a kind of workshop.
We are waiting written answers of those questions.
Yes, please. If you take a picture of this, and then
Good idea.
within the group, do the first exercise and do this, that will be kind of input to the management, and we will develop this and distribute to you. But at the same time, we will have a kind of, when we gather together, we will have a